about two girls and their experiences with malaria. This story is told by a girl named Mariana, who's 13 years old, and it's about her friend named Wande, who both of these girls are in the Sikuri tribe in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. Mariana is worried because her friend Wande is very sick. She has a fever and she's becoming very ill, and Mariana is worried that Wande has malaria. So Mariana is talking to her friend and saying, you know, maybe you should go visit the hospital, I'll go with you, I'm really worried about you. But Wande is very resistant and doesn't want to go to the hospital. She tells her friend, I visited my medicine man and he gave me this natural remedy and I drank it, but I don't feel very well still. So Wande basically has an internal struggle between her religious beliefs and going to the hospital and getting modern medication. Wande's brother comes home and he had been to school in London, and he basically convinces her, he says, if you don't go to the hospital, there's a chance you may never recover and you could die. So Wande does go to the hospital and gets treatment for malaria, and so she's better, and she also sleeps behind a bed net like this young woman. But the point is that Wande was struggling with her traditional convictions and the knowledge that people that she loved had about malaria. And I think this is really important because it shows the agency, it shows Wande's agency and her taking control of her own health, which is what this summit is all about, occupying your own health. So Wande made a good choice in going to visit the hospital to get treated for her malaria, and she wouldn't have been able to do so without the support of her family and the knowledge that they had regarding malaria. So malaria is the #1 killer in Africa, and I chose this topic because malaria restricts future generations in places like Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia, and Tanzania. It restricts future generations from forming a workforce, earning a wage, and supporting a family. This presentation is focused on the dynamic efforts between local and international agents in the prevention of malaria and the promotion of education and empowerment over this disease. So first, what is malaria? Malaria is an infectious disease that is caused by a parasite called Plasmodium falciparum. This parasite is transmitted through one specific species of mosquito, the Anopheles mosquito, and it can only be transmitted through a female Anopheles because this female needs blood in order to nourish her eggs. Next slide, please. So this is just a simple malaria transmission cycle photo. Basically, the parasite infects the mosquito, and once the mosquito bites the person, the parasite localizes in the person's liver, where it enters the more mature stages of development. The Plasmodium parasite infects the red blood cells and results in a lack of blood flow to the brain and other vital organs, which is why people who have malaria get shakes and they have a very high fever. The Anopheles mosquito developed an adaptive radiation in tropical environments, which is why it's very common in sub-Saharan African nations. Malaria uses the red blood cells as a factory for replication to produce more infected cells. Malaria is not a virus or a bacteria, but it's a parasite, which means you can be infected multiple times over and over again. You do not get an immune system, an immunity to it. Therefore, proactive measures are absolutely necessary to prevent primary infection and recurrent infection of malaria. Just as a side note that I thought was interesting was that one of the natural methods of prevention for malaria, or defense systems to malaria, is having a sickle cell trait. If you have a sickle cell trait, your red blood cells are sickle-shaped, and that's not a preferred environment for the malaria. The malaria can't thrive in these sickle-shaped blood cells. That's not to say that having one is better than the other. They're both very traumatic, but it's just an example of a natural defense system against malaria. So what are some other ways to prevent malaria? You can kill the mosquito. So you can, obviously, you're depleting the transmitters and they're not able to live and infect more people. You can take quinine or artemisinin-based drugs, but these drugs, for people in sub-Saharan nations like Kenya and Uganda, these are expensive and they're not easy to access. You can cultivate natural remedies, so growing herbs and plants in order to alleviate the symptoms of malaria. You can use mosquito nets, whether they are insecticide treated or not. Insecticide treated nets have a pesticide on them that kills the mosquito, the Anopheles mosquito, once it lands on the net. You can make your own nets out of cotton. Also, you can destroy the Anopheles mosquito breeding areas. If you eliminate stagnant water sources where they breed, then they can't pass on their genes and infect more people. So some other ways to prevent malaria involve social networks and local programs. These women are working in Banur, Kenya, in a program called Biogardening Innovations. And what they do at Biogardening Innovations is they have a local garden and they plant, cultivate, process, and distribute natural remedies to combat malaria. So what their natural resource to combat malaria is called Artemisia annua, and it's a natural drug that's used to combat malaria, and it's used for pharmaceutical purposes to combat uncomplicated malaria. But what they do is they make a solution, they make a natural remedy of this Artemisia annua, and they distribute it to local community members, and these people like having their natural remedies over something that's A, expensive, and B, really hard to obtain. So Biogardening Innovations is sponsored by Population Services International, which is a US-based program that's, their initiative is to battle poverty. And so PSI is sponsoring Biogardening Innovations, and this in turn creates jobs at all levels of production of Artemisia annua. There's people who are working to farm and plant Artemisia annua. People are harvesting and cultivating it. There are people that are processing it, so they're making it into this natural solution and package it. Then there are people that are selling and distributing it. So these two women are health workers who they were taught by the PSI, and so they can inform members of the group on the dosage to take of this, how often you take it, side effects, or things like that. And sometimes they make house calls, which is really convenient for people who are sick and can't leave their house, or they have children that are sick and they can't leave their house. So Biogardening Innovations generates income and provides accessible, natural ways to fight malaria through community-based efforts, which I think is really important to mention at this summit, because it's not just going in and farming this natural resource. They're promoting people to help themselves. So the people are working in this garden, and the people are working to make house calls, and so they're helping them help themselves, and not necessarily just going in and say, this is what we're going to do for you. So I think that's really positive in battling malaria. You can go to the next slide. Sorry. Okay, so this is a drama group that is that's in Kenya, or in Nairobi in Kenya, and they're sponsored by the USAID program, or a USAID organization. And what they do is they perform skits in a public setting in order to raise awareness and educate people about malaria. So they go in and they make malaria seem as a drama, and so people are able to relate to it, from young children to to elderly people. They understand what's going on, and they understand that this group is sort of not poking fun, but they're raising awareness, and people are able to understand what they're saying without them blatantly saying it. So they're teaching, but it's in a different sort of environment. And I think this is really important because, again, local initiatives are using their own manpower and resources in order to help their own people. Next slide, please. So here's another. This is children, and they're working in this same sort of theater group in order to raise awareness for malaria. And this is especially successful because children, obviously, they like to act. Some children, they like to act out their goals, and they are able to understand what's going on. So teaching people about malaria in this interactive way gives them the means to control their own health. Next slide, please. So these examples are the combined efforts of international and local volunteers to prevent malaria. Malaria in the realm of public health continues to suppress children and families. It can be eradicated if more developed countries and educated volunteers donate their time to prevent people in Kenya, Ethiopia, Uganda, and other sub-Saharan African nations. It provides them with resources and education in order to take control of their own health. So these are two of the articles from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that I thought pertained to my research. Number 1 states, all humans are born free and equal in dignity and rights, endowed with reason and conscience, and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood, and I thought that was really important. Obviously, more developed nations and educated scholars and volunteers can go and help these people help themselves. In conclusion, next slide, please. So these are just children that I thought were cute, and I wanted to show them to you. So if basically what I'm saying is, if we can help, we should, and not only going in there and saying, do this, do that, but you give people the means and the resources so that they can help themselves, whether it be through a local farm or in a drama group. So if we work together, we can eradicate malaria in Kenya, Ethiopia, Uganda, and other sub-Saharan nations in Africa. Thank you.